Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Brett Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to brettridgway.com/freebie. Welcome to the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway, where you'll learn the keys to building a profitable speaking business from speaking industry pros. Each week, we interview a great guest who will share his or her speaking journey, identify what their keys to success have been, and highlight some critical mistakes they've made along the way that you'll want to avoid. Be sure to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com. And while you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now, sit back, tune in, and get ready to meet this week's guest.
Educator and sport professional with nearly 3 decades of experience in the field of sport management and athletic training. He specializes in the areas of sport marketing, public relations, leadership, and social media, and has taught in the United States and across the globe, including Botswana, Malaysia, and Thailand. He's always been a forward thinker and problem solver, which led him to write Social Media and Sport Marketing, which was one of the first books ever written on that subject. He is also the host of 2 podcasts, one in a totally out there niche for me, the Golf Week Amateur Tour, and the second one on speaking with confidence. He's also the creator of the Formula for Public Speaking, which is a step-by-step program to help anyone who wants to improve their public speaking skills. When he's not doing that, he's spending time with kids, wife, grandkids, and all the things that we should be doing with life. So, Tim, welcome to the Spotlight on Speaking show.
Thanks so much. I really do appreciate it, and looking forward to chatting with you, and hopefully we can provide some good information for your listeners.
Well, let's do that. So let's go back, Tim. So you've been involved in a number of different areas over the years. So when did you first realize, hey, I need to get up in front of people and share some of what I've learned, not just be a behind-the-scenes type person?
Well, probably, when I started teaching, I knew at that point that, communication skills and interpersonal skills was critical to success. And it doesn't really matter to me what industry you're in. If you don't know how to talk to people and deal with people, communicate with people, you're not going to be successful. And so I started, when I first started teaching, helping students, try and get over that hump of confidence, or the idea of sounding stupid, or the fear of messing up, or what have you. And the first thing I started on, and I've learned a lot over the years in doing this, was trying to get them to stop with the filler words, the uhs, the ums, the likes, the on that, or, all those other things. And through a few years of doing that, I realized I was approaching it all wrong, because just telling them to stop doing those things doesn't really help them figure out how to stop doing those things, or the process to stop doing those things. And, I could really empathize with those students, because I was in their seat, many years before. So I really started doing some research on processes, and I'm really kind of a process guy. I think if we have a simple process that we can do that's repeatable, that's going to get results, that's probably the best way to start and best way to learn. And then once you can master that process, then you can branch out and start doing other things to be even more successful. So that's kind of the journey that I was on. And so over the last probably 5 years, after COVID, I really kind of perfected the process, because since COVID, the interpersonal communication from young professionals, I think, has gotten demonstrably worse than it has in the past.
Now, are you talking about teaching at the college level, the high school level, or something different?
So primarily at the college level, but I also coach young professionals in that 25 to 28 year range as well. But the majority of my experience does come from college students and helping them.
Now, was this overcoming the ums and the ahs and the ers something that you personally had to do yourself?
Oh, Brett, I had to overcome much more than the uhs and the ums. So for me, um, when I was in college, you had to take the personal communication speech course. But it's varied over the years, and I kept dropping it. And my advisor kept telling me, you need to take it to graduate. And understand at this point in my life, I'd been an athlete, I'd been in the military, had some leadership roles in the military, so I knew how to talk to people. I knew how to inspire and motivate, and I've always been, kind of in that realm. But the thought of standing up in front of a group of people that I didn't know just petrified me. So my last semester of my senior year, my advisor said, "Look, you've done all this work, but if you don't take this class, you're not going to graduate." So I reluctantly took the class and didn't drop it. And the very first time that was my turn to get up in front of the class and speak, I literally threw up. I got up in front of the class, so this is 1994, so a long time ago. So there was a table with it wasn't really a lectern, just kind of a box, and I had my notes up there, and there was a trash can there, and I literally threw up right in front of the class. So I had to overcome a lot more than just the uhs and the ums and those types of things. And the more practice that you get at it, the better that you'll do, and that's what we found.
Mm-hmm. So we mentioned in the introduction that you've done some teaching overseas. So what's your go-to topic when you're going overseas and doing some training or whatever?
So those assignments, I was really teaching sport marketing and public relations. So, in that case, I've got to do a lot of different research in terms of, what's their culture, what's acceptable in terms of marketing and public relations. How do they communicate, from an organizational perspective, to their consumers. And what I found is it's very, very different than it is here in the United States. That whole communication process. And the way these classes are set up is it's kind of like a keynote speech for 5 days. So I'm standing on a stage, and when I was in Thailand and Malaysia, obviously I was the only English speaker. So that
they had a
presented
translator for you then?
They did. They did, but that also presents a lot of challenges for me, because I speak very fast. I'm a fast speaker. And when you can only say one or two sentences and then have to stop and then have it translated, it becomes very difficult to get your message across, and to provide examples to get that engagement. I mean, you know how it is. If the audience isn't engaged, then you've lost them, and so you've got to have that engagement even when you've got the translator.
So how do you get an audience involved when you're in that type of scenario?
Well, the way that after the very first day, I realized that I lost them after the first 20 minutes of an 8-hour talk. Right. So it was pretty much 8 hours. Yeah, obviously we had breaks in there, but I lost them after the first 20 minutes. And really what I decided to do was to number one, break them up into small groups. And about every 10 minutes, they would have a question that they had to work on, or a topic. So it was really kind of, okay, we're going to talk for 5 minutes on this. We'll take some questions, and then you're going to have a quick assignment, and we're going to talk about it amongst the different groups. And that seemed to work out, really well. But I think one of the biggest ways to get engagement to begin with is to ask the audience questions, to get them involved, or telling stories that they can actually relate to. So again, when you're overseas and you've got a different culture, finding a story that is relevant to you and their culture really does ingratiate them to you.
So obviously doing your homework in advance of that type of speaking engagement was critical to being able to be successful. When you're going into any given speaking engagement, Tim, what are your typical procedures or processes that you follow to determine how you can make that speech the best it possibly can be for that given audience?
Brett, that's a great question, and this goes to the process of me, the system, and the very first thing that I do is research, and I start with a step-by-step process. First, I look at the audience. Who's in the audience? What's their basic knowledge level? Are they there because they want to be there? Are they there because they're required to be there? What's their age level? Because again, just look at society today. If you're talking to a group of younger professionals, they're going to be digging in their phones while you're talking. When you get to older professionals, and I'll say seasoned professionals, we're more attentive in terms of not digging in our phones, but looking at you, even though we may not be engaged. So figuring out, how you're going to engage the audience based on the demographics is really important. And then from there, you can look at, okay, if this is the audience and this is the topic that I'm talking about, how are we going to get the content or the topic to that audience, or what is that content going to be? And then you look at the expectations of everybody. What does the audience want to get out of the talk? What does the organization that hired you, or the conference planner, or the business, or whoever it is that's hired you, what do they want to get out of it? And what do you, as the speaker, or the knowledge expert, want them to get out of it as well? And finding that, kind of building that Venn diagram, finding that sweet spot so that everybody gets everything that they want out of it. And then finally, it's building the script. And when I talk about building the script, I'm not talking about, a word for word, a script like in a movie or anything, but, and maybe you start like that. It really kind of depends on who you are, but figuring out, taking those other pieces and laying out the information. How are you going to put your visual, if you're going to have one, how are you going to put that together? What terms are you going to use? What's going to be your call to action? And then it's practice. It's practice. It's practice. It's practice. It's practice. And so again, that's why I think, you don't necessarily need a full written out script, because then people are going to know that you're either reading or you're memorizing it, because again, it has to come off like it's a conversation. And the more conversational it is, again, the more interactive and engaged the audience is going to be.
I mean, you talk about your overseas experiences, Tim. I mean, I'm not sure I know enough about any given subject to be able to go on for 5 days, man. I don't know. I don't know how you do that.
Well, it's essentially what I was doing was I was giving a basic level intro to sport marketing talk.
Yeah.
So what I would do over the course of a semester, breaking out into 5 days based on their culture.
So as a keynote presenter, what in your mind makes for a successful keynote presentation, and how do you measure whether you've been successful or not?
Well, that's a really good question. I think for me, I don't want people to tell me that I did a good job. I want them to tell me that they've learned something, or that I've inspired them in a given manner to do something, to take that action, whatever that call to action is that we've talked about in the talk or the speech or what have you. Because just saying you did a good job. Okay, did a good job at what? Wasting time. To me, it really is important to understand that they've actually gotten something out of it, and they can express what they've gotten out of it.
So aside from doing your homework in advance, what are a couple other, in your mind, keys to success for being a successful keynote presenter?
What I think it's practice at the craft, practice at talking, practice at telling stories. I think, I've talked to a number of people, just recently, and, if you look at comics, they're probably the best storytellers, because that's what they do. Most of them are telling stories about their life. And I brought up an example, just a couple of days ago with somebody that I saw on, it was Dateline or 60 Minutes or, one of those nighttime shows. They did a special on Kevin Hart, and they followed him around, and he was actually doing some shows where he was practicing new material. So he would he would book a show at a small venue, take everybody's phones, electronics, and he would tell them that I'm practicing new material. And then what he would do is he would figure out which jokes hit, when they hit, how they hit, and which ones didn't. And then he would go back and work on it. And I think it's no different for a speaker. You can't just show up on stage, once a month or once every 6 months or whatever, and think that you're going to be good. You have to actually practice your craft just like anything else. Practice telling stories, practice talking to people. When I say practice talking to people, that may sound kind of funny, but even salesmen, and this is really indicative of the sport industry. When we sell tickets, they role play on a regular basis, probably 2 or 3 times a month. Picking up the phone. I say picking up the phone. We don't pick up the phone anymore, but calling people, that's what they do every day. And so they do role plays on a regular basis with somebody in their team, and they answer objections, or they try and figure out what's a good way to sell a new package or what have you. And I don't think that it's really any different than, from a speaking perspective, I don't think that we should approach it any differently.
I agree. So I have a couple other questions I want to ask you, Tim, but before we do, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor.
Are you a business owner or entrepreneur who's had great success in the business world, and now you want to launch a speaking career to share your message with the world? If that's you, then listen up. 25-year speaking industry veteran Brett Ridgway has released his latest special report, 3 key things entrepreneurs must master to build a profitable speaking business. To pick up your copy, go to brettridgway.com/freebie.
And we are back with the Spotlight on Speaking show, and my guest this week is Tim Newman. So, Tim, one of my favorite questions to ask my guest always is, okay, time to fess up, get a little red face, and maybe share a mistake you made in your speaking career that left you embarrassed at the time, but a valuable lesson was learned, and it would be something that you would highly advise aspiring speakers not to do.
Well, we'll take the throwing up in front of everybody and get rid of that one. But let's just take a more recent one. When you go through a talk and you know that people aren't being engaged, and yet you don't do anything about it. And I did that recently, and a person that I know and respect came to me and said, you did that. I could tell that you knew it and you didn't do anything about it, and you wasted everybody's time. And so sometimes, even though we do these on a regular basis and it was a standard talk, I figured I would just go through the motions, and you can't do that. Every audience deserves your 100% engagement, enthusiasm, no matter what. And it's very obvious when, as a speaker, you don't give them your 100% effort and enthusiasm towards them. The audience should always come first, and I didn't do that.
I totally agree with that. And I was at an event several years ago where we had ended up with a fairly small crowd, and the speaker said, "There's so few people here, should I even speak?" I said, "Even if there's only one person in the room, you deliver the best damn speech you can possibly get. They get 100% of your attention." And so he agreed and spoke. But I mean, so many people have hangups, what do they think, they're above a small group or whatever, but you've got to deliver 100% regardless of the situation. So great advice there. So Tim, tell people a little bit more about now what it is that you do and how they can get involved in your world if they so choose.
So I'm actually doing a couple of things. I'm creating a new course. It's called the Formula for Public Speaking, and essentially it goes through the formula, which I call ACEs. It's the audience, communication, expectations, and script. And I give the students a step-by-step progression on how to prepare for a talk. And it doesn't matter if it's a keynote, doesn't matter if it's you're standing up in front of a team meeting, going to a networking event. If you follow these steps and get comfortable, you're going to be a much better interpersonal communicator. So the ACEs program is helpful to a variety of different scenarios. So that's one thing. The other thing is I'm open and I help and coach not only businesses but young professionals in their speaking journey. And again, I do a lot with keynotes, but I also do a bunch of coaching with just being comfortable with interpersonal communication. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very difficult to be comfortable as a keynote or in front of a group of people if you struggle with interpersonal communication in small groups. So the more comfortable that we can get young professionals interacting and sharing themselves and being vulnerable and telling stories in those small groups, the better they're going to be at leadership, the better they're going to be at running meetings, team meetings, and eventually keynotes if that's something that they aspire to do.
And where do they go online, Tim, to find out more about either of those things? Okay,
so for the general website, it's timnewmanspeaks.com. But if you want to enroll the course, that's going to launch on August 1st, it's speakingwithconfidencecourse.com.
All right, so I appreciate you sharing that, and I thank you so much, Tim, for being my guest today on this episode of the Spotlight on Speaking show. Wish you the greatest of success with your upcoming course. And to all the listeners out there, thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, may this year be your greatest year yet. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
This has been the Spotlight on Speaking show with Brett Ridgway. Be sure to join us every week as we interview speaking industry pros and have them share their best tips for building a profitable speaking business. Until next week, thank you for tuning in. And remember to visit our website at spotlightonspeaking.com so you can enjoy even more great episodes like this one. While you're here, be sure to subscribe via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Spotlight on Speaking show. Until then, our sincere best wishes to you for the greatest of success as you work to build your own profitable speaking business.